Okay. So I just want to officially welcome everybody to our webinar tonight. My name is Eileen Michelli, Marfan Foundation, and we are recording this webinar so that if you want to watch it again or you want to share it with anybody, you're free to do that. So tonight, we have a personal perspectives panel, and we're featuring members of our Marfan, Loeys-Dietz, and VEDS community, and giving you insights into dad's perspectives, something we've never done before. And we hope this will help you whether you are a dad, you have a dad, you love a dad, I want to get some different insights from different members of our community. So before we get to introduce them, I want to introduce Michael Weimer, our President and CEO, to say a few words.
Thanks very much, Eileen. Good evening, everyone. It's been fun chatting before this meeting. It's great. This is actually, I think, one of the most exciting, fun, engaging panels that we've had through many, many, many webinars. I was looking at today a post from another organization, and they said they were firing up their webinars. Well, we fired ours up, I think, last March. We've had an extraordinary run with just a series of amazing programs. We did our surgery series in February during Marfan month, and just keeps rolling. In mind, we're going to have a lot more information in the next few weeks. Our virtual conference this year, unfortunately, we could not have the conference in person like virtually every other organization, but July 8th through 11, we will have a lot of programming that will be going on. It's going to be largely focused on connections. We'll certainly have a lot of the traditional kinds of programming we would offer. But next year, in July, almost the same dates, we will be in person, and we will be at Hogue in Newport Beach, California. So for those folks out west or beyond, be a great time to join us. And then we plan to return to Chicago. First time it will be, I guess, in 6 or 7 years, the following July. So lots of exciting programming that will be happening in person as we move forward. But tonight, I think we're all blessed to have such a great group that's with us, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy this like I know that you will. And so, Eileen, with that, back to you and the group.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Michael. So I'm just going to do a little brief intro of the panelists. Before I do that, though, I just want to remind everybody that there is a Q&A box. If you have any questions you'd like to pose to any of the panelists or the issues that you'd like to discuss, put them in the Q&A box, and we will see those. Anything not related to this panel, any other chat, put in the chat box, and I will be in there talking to you guys in there. So just briefly, and I apologize to my panelists because I stalked your Facebook pages yesterday. We have, and I'm not going to tell you much about them because they're going to be talking about themselves, but for our panelists, we have Adam Bitterman, who you see with his wife and kids, Steve Martman with his son and wife, with apologies to Rachel. Here's a picture of Jeremiah's with the boys, and Derek on the right with his crew, his huge crew, which I'm sure he'll be telling you about. And then as our expert here, our expert panelist, we have Mitchell Pariani, who is a genetic counselor and the program coordinator over at the Stanford Marfan and Aortic Disease Center. Mitchell's been great friend to the Marfan Foundation. He leads this dad's workshop for us every year at our annual conference. So he's certainly been involved with this for a really long time, and we're really fortunate to have him here tonight. Because it's a dad's panel and it'd be really out of place for me to be moderating this, I'm going to pass the duties over to Ben Weissman, who kind of grew up with the foundation and was a board member for a long time, and really one of my go-to people. So Ben, thank you for doing this tonight. I'm going to shut my video off, stop sharing, and hand it over to you.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Eileen. And when Eileen says I'm her go-to person, she means once she's asked 10 or 12 people who've said no, I'm in the 13th or 14th slot. But it's really a great honor to be here and helping to guide this conversation tonight. As Eileen mentioned, there's a Q&A box, so please drop any questions in there. I know a number of folks have submitted questions as well, so we have a good group to jump off to help us get started. Just a little bit quickly about myself, so I'm not just this beautiful man talking to you all. I am in my mid-30s or late 30s, I suppose, depending on who you ask. I am a Bostonian at heart, although I live in northern New Jersey, working in theater and politics, which is probably the same thing. I am the third generation in my family with Marfan. My mom has it. She's lives up in Montreal. My grandfather had it as well. And so I continue on a great tradition of Weissman's with Marfan. I served as the leader of the teen program for a number of years at our annual conference, and really we helped to grow that program enormously, which is really, really exciting. And as Eileen mentioned, was a member of the foundation's board of directors for a number of years. Just briefly, I remember leaving the first conference I ever went to when I was 12 or 13 years old, and telling my parents I never wanted to come back or be involved with this organization. It was a rough time for me, but clearly the joke is on me as you look at me now years later here. And I look around this group of panelists, and I look down the list of attendees, but it's people like you are the reason why I'm so grateful to be a part of this community. Each and every one of our amazing panelists is incredibly inspiring and has a lot of lessons and a lot of experiences that we could all learn from. So I want to thank them all so much for being here. I want to thank you all so much for joining us as well. This really is a very special community, and it's a community that's so special because of the people. So with that, I am going to go down the list of our panelists and ask each of you to just share a bit about yourselves, your name, where you're from, if you're affected with what, and as well as if any of your kids are affected. And I know we're going to get to much more of your stories as we move along. So we'll just do a little brief intro. And Steve, I'm going to kick it to you and ask you to kick us off.
All right. Thank you very much, Ben. My name's Steve Martman. I'm from New York City. I'm almost 50 years old in about a couple of weeks. I was diagnosed about 25 years ago, and I had an emergency dissection. I've had many urgent and emergent procedures. My son, Alex, he's 7 years old. He also has Marfan syndrome. He was diagnosed in utero, actually. We had my wife tested while she was pregnant. He has some outward features. So we are monitoring his symptoms as well. And so far, so good. It's been an interesting ride.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. Mitchell.
I'm Mitchell Periani. I don't have Marfan syndrome, but I've been volunteering with the foundation and coordinating Marfan centers for the last 14 years. So although I'm not biologically related to anybody with the condition, I have tons of family in our extended family that we have here in clinic with Marfan, and have been lucky enough to be involved in this workshop in the conference over the years. First 7 years I was with Cedars-Sinai down in Los Angeles, and then now in the last 7 years I've been here at Stanford with their Marfan Center, and currently sitting in Craig Miller's office. So I'm really lucky to be here today in this room.
That is a place of honor to be sitting. Great, thanks so much. And that's all right. I know you don't have Marfan, but no one's perfect. All right, Derek.
Good evening. My name is Derek Lutz. I live in Ohio. I was the one with the big brood there. I have 6 children with my wife, Beth. My son, who is my second to oldest, has Loeys-Dietz syndrome, and he just celebrated his 15th heart anniversary from when he had his aortic root replacement just a week or 2 ago. So beyond that, something about us that's interesting is my wife, Beth, was the co-founder of the Loeys-Dietz Foundation. She now serves on the Marfan board, but she started that with Gretchen Oswald and many years ago because she wanted answers, because I feel like when there weren't a lot of cases when Alex was first diagnosed, and we can get into that more later, but yeah, that's kind of our story.
Great, thanks very much, Derek.
Mm-hmm.
Adam.
Good evening, my name is Adam Bitterman. I am a Long Islander out here on the East Coast, mainland we call it. This is my first time participating in the Father's Workshop. I usually participate in the orthopedic workshops as well as parental planning. I am affected with Marfan syndrome personally. I have 2 kids, both of whom do not have the syndrome. I'm an orthopedic surgeon by trade, and so I serve on the professional advisory board currently, which is a very exciting role for me. And so I have two perspectives here. So looking forward to participating.
Great, thank you very much. Every time I hear Long Island, I just think about the North Fork and drinking some wine. So now I'm thirsty, but it's always good to see you. And last but not least, Jeremiah.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Yeah, so my name is Jeremiah. I currently live in Austin, Texas. I've been in Texas my whole life. Once you've been in Texas, you don't ever leave Texas. I've got 3 sons, 2 of who are affected with vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I guess I missed the part, but I'm affected with vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome as well. My wife and I are both very active in the community. We're both work with the steering committee on the VEDS movement. And, we just are really passionate about this. And, we're just excited to help out in any way. And, we're just, we just do what we can for the community, and and we're here to help out.
Thank you. And and being here and this conversation, I think, is such an enormous help. That no one goes through this journey alone, and so thank you all again so much. Maybe just kicking it off, would love to hear a little bit about what played into each of your decisions to become a father, and perhaps what has surprised you the most in fatherhood. And so I can call on someone, or I can let, if anyone feels like they want to jump in.
I'll jump in. I've always wanted to be a dad. I spent the first half of my life, quote unquote, normal, not diagnosed. And I always had, a lot of different dreams of what I wanted to do, but no matter what, before being diagnosed, after being diagnosed, I always wanted to be a dad. I didn't grow up I grew up in a big extended family, but I was an only child growing up, and I wanted lots of kids. As luck would have it, I met my wife a little later in life, but she knew me in my Marfan days. After I was diagnosed, she's been with me through a lot and has been remarkably supportive, and it's been great. And I knew, even having Marfan, having the support of the Marfan community, having been through the ringer myself, yet having gotten the support of the foundation, or being in New York City with access to great resources, nothing was going to stop that. As far as surprises goes, it's amazing what people understand at such a young age and what they can handle. Bringing our son to the Marfan Foundation conference, for example, for the first time, and being around other kids with physical traits like him and all that. And it's just normal and it's okay. And explaining some things to him as I've had surgeries, how much they can process when you put things in the right terms.
Oh, I guess I'll go. I think my passion, and just like growing up, I always knew I wanted to be a father as well too. I grew up with 2 brothers and parents who were just, very loving. And I just always had like this innate, feeling inside that I wanted to be a dad one day. And so our story is a little bit, as far as like our diagnosis, like I didn't get diagnosed until after our kids were already born. And we got diagnosed like through our 4-year-old at the time. It's things that surprise you. I guess as a parent, what doesn't surprise you? I mean, a surprise of getting a diagnosis like VEDS. I mean, that definitely was a bit of a challenge, but over time and through as time has progressed, and we've learned to live with it and to educate ourselves and just be our own advocates and just be active and that's I mean, kids are crazy. You just do the best you can. I mean, I think you wing it most days, but that's
Great. Derek, yeah. Are you Derek? You just went on mute. Yep. Oh,
still on mute.
Still on mute, Derek.
I thought I unmuted.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. This is my first Zoom call through COVID, okay? So
Wow.
I'm a dentist by profession, and so I just go and see my patients. I don't mess with the computers and stuff, So anyways, I guess I always knew I was going to be a father at some point. I mean, in my mind, I didn't realize I was going to have 6 kids, but Beth said we were. So no, we never really talked about it. I just told her we couldn't have a kid until I was ready to get out of school. And so we just started working on it, and it happened. And then to give you some context, our oldest is 21. Alex, our affected, is 20. We have another child that's 19. Those are the 2 closest together. And then I'm probably going to mess this up, but we have a 17-year-old that turns 18 next week. We have a 16-year-old and we have a 14-year-old. So basically, we kind of lock and loaded, and we just had kids, and we never talked about how many we were going to have. And really what it was is I never wanted to drive a minivan. And so when we got to the point where we filled the Suburban up or whatever, that was it. So that was kind of my stopping point there. But yeah, kids are great. I tell patients all the time, with 6 kids, I mean, I have a big perspective of how kids are. And I said, I always have one child that they had the best day of their life. I always have one child that had the worst day of their life, and I have everything in between. So, but yeah, I mean, I feel very blessed that I have, the 6 children. I mean, they keep it entertaining, that's for sure. So, and they're all over, they're everywhere. Alex is in law school at Boston, but he right now is here. He was just helping me get the computer working since I don't know how to do it. But yeah, I have one in Savannah. I have one at Ohio State, one at Indiana University. Where else do I have them? I think that's it right now. And then Alex should be in Boston, but he'll be there in the fall is when he's going to move there. So, but.
Steve, did you have something else you wanted to throw in there?
Oh, no, sorry. Was I off mute?
Nope, the hand was up, so it's all good. Adam or Mitchell, anything you want to add here?
Yeah. I mean, I would just echo what has been said, that kids are amazing. I always knew that I wanted to be a father, which is a matter of when. As Derek had said, it involved training, but that's a whole other story. Ultimately, kids are very resilient with what they encounter on a daily basis, what they see on a daily basis. And it's always surprising how they absorb everything and how they kind of produce their thoughts and formulate their thoughts. And so that was something that wasn't necessarily surprising, but more so just an amazing thing to see how their minds work and how flexible they are with whatever they encounter.
And I'm not a father yet, but I wanted to add that hopefully by our next in-person conference, all that'll change. I definitely want to be a father. I'm ready for it. I think we've gotten to the point in my life where it's finally happening. So I'm hopefully going to have updates at the next Father's panel at the Southern California conference.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed for you. I would love if you would mind just touch on what dads who are already diagnosed should consider, or there's things that are worth considering discussing before having kids.
One of the things that we talk about with our patients is really having a discussion as a couple and finding out where you're both at. Because so often it can, an individual can have their thoughts and their take on the situation. But it's really not until you've discussed it completely as a couple with your partner that you can really kind of get a good idea of, what is the other person looking for? And how do you think as a couple that would change your relationship and to go forward? And so we're very much in that discussion right now. And there's just a lot of, back and forth really about, kind of what expectations are going to be in the future when we try to set up a family together. And so for us, without kind of the medical background of everything with Marfan in relation, it's what we have in our discussions. With Marfan syndrome, it can be a little bit more complex, especially if the mother is the one that's affected, because there are some medical implications that need to be considered and taken in really getting advice from the cardiologist, from a perinatologist about how safe is a pregnancy? What's the data around that? And we really are starting to get more and more data, especially with VEDS, especially with Loeys-Dietz, ACTA2 mutations, and there has been data going back for a while with Marfan syndrome. But we really are trying to give our patients a good understanding of what those risks would be. And if the father's affected, we'll talk about what it would be to, the odds of passing it down. Just naturally, genetically, there's a 50-50 chance of passing it down to your own kids. If a couple goes through in vitro fertilization, we can lower the likelihood of passing any of these conditions down to less than 1% by doing in vitro fertilization and actual testing of the embryos before they implant them into mom. And so a lot of people are unaware of that as an option. And so we like to put everything on the table, as well as adoption, as well as gamete donation. If you just need an egg or you just need a sperm, we can do that as well. And so what we do is try to give everybody the education they have so they know all their options, so they can discuss it as a couple, as a family, and really figure out what decision's the right one for them going forward.
That's great. Yeah, thank you very much. In terms of sort of talking to that theme of sort of conversation around talking to your kids, I'm curious, and we'll go around on this one, but if and people have advice for how to have conversation with your kids about the various things that having a condition like, like any of these, like VEDS or Loeys-Dietz or Marfan's may present. How did you or could you have those conversations without scaring or alarming them, or any advice that you may have? And Derek, maybe I'll start with you on this, and would love also to hear a little bit, sort of, because with a kid who's going out into the world in a big way, and going to the best city in America, if I do say, if I
Bias.
put my bias in here, but how you continue to support your child as they mature into an adult and manage some of their own healthcare. So maybe we'll start there, and then we'll go around, and with any advice people have on having those kinds of conversations with your kids at various ages.
Yeah. With Alexander, so he was diagnosed around the age of 5. So it's a little different than, say Steve, he was, I think, were you an adult when you were diagnosed?
Yep, I was 25.
Yeah. So Alex, he grew up not knowing any different, really, if you think back, I don't remember much before the age of 5. So, he kind of grew up, well, he had Loeys-Dietz, but you know what I mean? That was just who he was. I think one thing is with his sisters, we treated him just the same, we didn't obviously we took care of his needs and stuff that needed to be dealt with. But we always joke when we would travel and, go on cruises and stuff, the kids all had their own little suitcase and they manned their own little suitcase. And, they looked like a bunch of little ducks following behind in the airports and stuff like that. So I think as he's gotten older, there have been some issues, sometimes he is down, or maybe a lot of times he's down about the condition. The other thing about Alex is he's kind of an overachiever educationally. He graduated at the age of 15 and started at NYU. And so we're from a small town in Ohio, and he moved to Manhattan at the age of 15, which to people in Ohio, they're like, how did that happen? And I remember Michael Weimer said, he goes, well, we raise kids in New York City too. So I've always felt good about that. But anyway, so he's in law school and he's 20 years old, and he just actually got another accolade. I'll brag about him a moment here. He is, for the law school at Boston University, he's the president of the student government now. So he just got that just last week. So good for him. But so, I guess we never really, we take things as they come. He's been very fortunate. He had the one surgery when he was 5, and he hasn't had to have any other procedures. He may, but I guess the way we do it is we just kind of deal with it as it unfolds, But from the standpoint of he didn't give up a lot when he was diagnosed, because he wasn't doing a lot of sports and stuff like that. So he just wasn't, he wasn't a sports kid growing up, because that kind of stopped before it even really began, So I hope that kind of answered the question. That's how we handled it. Obviously, Beth is really involved with everything. So she kind of takes the point on it, and I follow her lead on it. But I also have to dampen her down sometimes, because she get a little mom crazy about it. I think she's listening, so I have to be careful. But she gets a little, she just gets a little, I don't know what you say. Overprotective or whatever. And I'm like, just leave them be. So, you kind of, everybody does that in their relationships. You have to balance out the other party and how you rear the children. So
Yeah, I suspect you might be in a little trouble later, but we'll wishing you the best of luck there.
yeah, thank you.
Now, Jeremiah, I think you said you're I mean I think maybe the next
Yep.
rung down of age. So would love, and also what it's like with rough house with multiple kids, and what is that experience like in your house?
Yeah. So as far as like kind of telling the kids, like, so where our kids were a little bit younger when they were diagnosed. So it's kind of, I think it's a different approach based off of like age and kind of where they're at in life. I think like as a younger kid, when we hear this a lot from other parents in the community, about, you kind of try to kind of ease them as a kid. Maybe you tell them like their glue is not strong enough. I've heard that many times, right? You try to like figure a way how to explain it to them in terms that are very simple for a child to understand. As our middle child has gotten older, even our younger one, they're 8 and 11 now. They start to understand that there's something different about them, right? Because the challenges become is at school, right? We have to have a plan of action for them if they get in an incident or an event happens at school. They have to be prepared, and a lot of that comes with bringing awareness across the board. The principal at the school working with their teachers, the faculty. There's a lot that goes into that. But as far as like, I think too, kids can be challenging at that age, because like, for example, like, our son, right? There's things that he can't do in gym class that the other kids can do. So what we've had to do is try to figure things that they can do, like, to kind of, just to make up for the things that they can't do, right? And so there's some challenges involved with that. So, a lot of it's bringing awareness across the board, and even to the kids, hey, just having conversation about what VEDS is, what are the challenges associated with it. And just, that's really what it comes down to, I think, honestly, is in our case, and I definitely echo about the thing of just, just like, there's always like, you got to take it one day at a time. There's no magic bullet or no magic formula for you do X, Y, and Z and everything's going to be okay. I think it's just really just the most important thing is just education and having a plan of action.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And Steve, for you, and would welcome your perspective here as well. With I know a much younger, even younger kid.
Yeah, it's been interesting because there are two parts to it. I know my experience of being diagnosed as an adult. Our son Alex was diagnosed in utero, and this is all he's known. And we had to talk a lot about how to talk with him about it. And we've normalized it as best as we could. We knew he had to go through, whatever tests, the echocardiograms and all that. And he still does. And he takes medication. He takes losartan, and he has for a few years now. And he's at the other end, he's also seen me have probably about half a dozen surgeries. He's seen me post-op after having both cardiac and retinal surgeries and through my recovery. And that's had to be explained at some level. But the key for us has been to normalize it, not to over dramatize it and not to downplay it, to try and find that balance of explaining it in terms that they can relate to and not make it scary. And that's challenging. It can be hard, but it's worth it, because this is going to be part of his life for the rest of his life. And there are risks, but there's risks of anything. You look both ways before you cross the street. You get an echocardiogram to make sure that your heart's okay. You make it the same. The reality is what you make of it. And that's pretty much how it's been going. And so far, so good.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And so I guess switching gears just a little bit, would love to sort of talk about the perspective of being a dad with the diagnosis. So, and Adam, I'd love to start with you here. And, obviously not only dad role, but also, of course, you have the additional, doctor role. And what is that, does that diagnosis affect you? How does it affect you? Scare the kid? Like, what is that sort of experience of being a dad with a diagnosis like this mean, and what guidance or advice would you have around that?
Yeah. So for me, obviously, having the syndrome and having children, I want to be around for as long as possible. And sort of echoing what Steve had said, you can oversimplify it to, you got to get checked, you got to get follow-up, you got to do the right thing. It sounds trivial, but it's true. We are in a very fortunate time where we've made such significant strides. And I say we, meaning, my cardiology colleagues, my cardiothoracic surgery colleagues, where they've done such amazing work. Well, now other specialties are experiencing the downstream effect because people are living longer. So that's the positive thing here that we all need to take home. And I try and think about that every now and then, because I want to see everything from, my kids graduating kindergarten, which is coming up, to then Derek maybe going to that school up north that starts with an M. Because I have that in my family. I see all those weird letters behind your head. Yeah. But I'm a Michigan family, so we can talk about that offline. Anyway, but Ben, just to answer your question, I think it's, I'm certainly biased because I am with a medical background, and I am fortunate enough to know the ins and outs of what we're dealing with. But when I talk to someone who is naive or novice, so to speak, I just explain to them, I say, hey, look, this is one of many genetic disorders that are out there. This is what we got. It's something that we have to tackle, and things are advancing on a daily basis. So certainly it's okay to feel down. It's okay to feel left out, and that's normal. You're being left out in certain areas because you're being protected. And then it kind of shifts their mindset a little bit, and I think it helps get the point across. So yeah, that's my long-winded answer.
No, that's great. Thank you. And Jeremiah, I'm curious your perspective as well, again, sharing that diagnosis but as a father with the diagnosis, what that experience is, and any advice or perspectives that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, so in my case, I was actually diagnosed through my son. So, he got diagnosed first, and then we had our genetic testing because I had, number of kind of just issues kind of growing up as a kid that were just out of the ordinary. I had no idea they were related to VEDS until, we got our diagnosis. Now things kind of like, oh, wow, we have something to apply it to. I mean, honestly, like, I think, even, so we were diagnosed about 7 years ago. So I think, 7 years ago is just a relatively different time for the VEDS community, and just kind of like just understanding of what it was. There wasn't really a lot of stuff out there, but the stuff you did Google, right? It's like, it's pretty scary, median lifespan of like, mid 40s or something like that, which it's not the case now. There's some crazy information that's definitely out of date now that needs to get updated. And I'm, the community's working to get that stuff updated. As far as like being a dad, yeah, and having this condition, I mean, I think for about the first year of getting the diagnosis, I mean, it was definitely scary. I'm not going to lie, but at the same time, you have that innate, thing as father instinct, right? Like I've got to move, I've got to charge forward. I've got to continue to be a dad and raise my kids up, because at the end of the day, I think most of us dads want to raise up our kids to, be productive members of society, regardless of any kind of, genetic condition and whatnot. So I think for me, like, I just, we always, all of us more than likely put our kids first. So I think a lot of that just kind of, for me, staying busy and trying to not focus on it and dwell upon it too much, and just, staying active in the community and trying to help out other fathers if there's opportunity, raising awareness, whatever. I mean, that's for me, VEDS is not a weakness in any of these conditions. It's not a weakness. You utilize it as a strength to continue and just, don't dwell upon it. I mean, you can sit and sulk around about your condition, but at the end of the day, you still got to live your life and do the, find your passion,
Yeah. Thank you. That's good advice, no matter what, no matter what we're dealing with. Mitch, I'd love to just turn to you on this. And I actually just turned my chair like we were in a room, because I'm trying to channel that energy of the real life encounters again. But I'm curious, sort of from in your work, how you dealing with dads on this issue, and if there's any themes that have come up or advice that you've found that's been particularly helpful for folks.
100%. When a Dutch group surveyed a whole bunch of patients with Marfan syndrome and family members, and they found that when we looked at moms, their primary concerns were kind of fear of the unknown, fear that something would happen. For dads, really, the primary concerns were them fitting in and them being able to have a social circle, to have friends, and also, oddly, about them eating. They wanted to make sure that they got enough food. But those were two of the main primary things and differences between the two parents. But really, some of the other issues that come up are, especially when talking to the little kids, is we always try to bring up the concept of self-identity and where that fits in, not just with somebody that has Marfan syndrome, but somebody that might just be tall in their class, or somebody else that might have, orthotics in their shoes in their class. We all kind of struggle, especially through teens and adolescents, with the concept of self-identity and really trying to find our own. And so we try to introduce this bit by bit, especially on the pediatric side, so that we can start having a patient realize that they are more than just Marfan syndrome. There might be other things that they self-identify as, like somebody that's in the Big Ten, or a Michigan alumni, Michigan family, a Ford family, whatever it is, that they can really start to, put that whole picture together. They're more than just the diagnosis. And so really trying to, bring that comprehensive thought process back in is something that we do. The other thing that we try to really point out is the issue of self-awareness. How are you handling, where are these issues coming up throughout the day for you, either as a father or as a child? And really try to get people to understand if there's anxiety about coming to the doctor, kind of trying to talk that through. Well, what is the anxiety? And then also kind of the fear that, they have that something bad is going to happen to them. That's where we try to do a lot of the reassurance that behind the scenes, behind the curtain, there's this Wizard of Oz that is going to be taking care of you, and their entire team that is here to make sure that nothing bad happens. Just like Steve was saying earlier, all the echocardiograms we're doing, all the imaging that we're doing is here to keep you safe and here to make sure that nothing bad happens to the best of our ability. We can't be perfect, but we're going to do everything that we can to make this one small aspect of your life, hopefully, so that you can go on and do a whole bunch more. So I think those are kind of the things that, we bring up with our patients here as we're really trying to get them to consider this as a new diagnosis for them and to see how it fits into all these issues like identity.
Great, thank you. And, all keep us around as long as possible. As a Boston sports fan, to make sure I get more championships is always appreciated. So I can't talk about college sports; we don't do well there. But I guess on that subject of diagnosis, and Derek, maybe we'll start with you on this, just to talk about sort of what that reaction was, or what it was like to accept a diagnosis, accept that new diagnosis, and what that journey has been like for you.
So obviously, at the time he was diagnosed, I think we had 5 children. Yeah, that was right. So we had 5 children when he was diagnosed, and we had how we got there was he had 2 hernia surgeries that failed, just regular inguinal hernias, and they failed. And so that's not typical in an unaffected person. Usually they fix it one time and it's done. So they said, maybe we should, maybe you should do some genetic looking into some things. And so we ended up at Children's in Cincinnati, and basically just by chance, they ran the marker for Loeys-Dietz. And then, a week later we got the call, and it was a Wednesday, and I don't work Wednesday. And it was like around noontime. And they said basically that, he had Loeys-Dietz. And so I said, well, we kind of looked it up real quick, what did it involve? And we found this guy named Hal Dietz. Who's that, And so I saw that he was at Johns Hopkins, and I called him, and he answered the phone. And I said, hey, my name is Derek Utz, and I just found out my kid has your syndrome. And I said, so what do we do? And he said, well, I'd like to see him. And I said, okay. So we booked a flight. We met with Dr. Dietz, and he, we talked about everything. We had the echoes and everything as far as, to see what shape he was in. And basically he said, that he was going to have his aortic root replaced. And I said, well, what about like a baseline? And he said, well, you could use this as a baseline. And I said, well, can you guarantee that my kid will be alive, if we wait 6 months or a year? And he said, well, I can't guarantee that. And I said, well, then let's schedule the surgery. And so that's kind of how we handled it. I will say one thing. I think Jeremiah alluded to this with VEDS, but like VEDS 7 years ago is where we were when Loeys-Dietz was diagnosed, which is why Beth started the Loeys-Dietz Foundation. There was no real information. What they told us at Cincinnati is that he would be treated just like Marfan, which is that's not the case. There's different things, and I can't go into all of them because I don't know them all. But anyways, I know enough through hearing Beth that it's not the case. I mean, and so that was, and Michael Weimer did a great job with this, pulling VEDS and Loeys-Dietz all under the umbrella so that the information is all in one place. And, people now, they can get accurate information, not stuff like, what Jeremiah said he was getting, a few years back where you're like, oh, this is, terrible. I mean, it's hopeful now. So, but yeah, so that's kind of how we handled it with his diagnosis. And then he had the surgery. Beth was 9 months pregnant. She was in Baltimore for 3 weeks. I was there for the weekend. And she came home and had the baby next week, our 6th child. So she said, what if I have the baby while I'm here? And I said, well, I saw the other 5. I know how it goes. Oh.
I love
And
it.
one thing, Adam, sorry about the loss last night. I did have them in the finals.
Yeah, I'm thankful you were positive, because otherwise I'd say at least we didn't lose in the first round.
Although I do think losing in the first round was the cool thing to do this year. If you looked at my bracket,
It was.
we'll move from there. Stephen Jeremiah, I just want to give either of you a chance on this one as well. If you have something in particular around that initial diagnosis.
I guess
yeah.
I'll go. Yeah, I mean, the initial diagnosis, I mean, it's definitely, it was, in our case, I mean, it was definitely kind of a shock, I mean, I'll be honest, it was, I mean, not having any information and kind of feeling like you're on a deserted island and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the best thing that we've done is just, be part of a community. We found this community online. My wife is very active. She's a patient advocate for the VEDS community. I think for us, really just, I always come back to education is just, you got to educate yourself, and you've got to be your own advocate, because there's times where you go to the ER and the doctors don't know, maybe they've heard of VEDS or something, but you should always proceed with caution, and the only thing that we always default to is just, education, having education. There's some great tools out there that the VEDS movement offers. There's like a VEDS workbook that we have where you can keep track of everything. There's also a VEDS emergency card that's a really, concise kind of little index card sort of thing that can really help out. And my wife actually just used this thing a few weeks ago, and it was just, it got our kid back, into to get diagnostic, and the doctor was out like within, really short amount of time. So, I mean, these tools are out there, and they're to your benefit. Please take advantage of them.
Great. And Steve, actually, just briefly, I'd love to, one of the highlights for me, I know at conference was a couple of years was seeing Alex, and seeing you was nice too. But I'm curious sort of what that decision was like for you to bring your kid to conference.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me what it was like to bring him into the world.
Well, there's that too.
I was getting my head set up for that question.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to answer that question though first before getting to yours, because people asked us, we had, because I knew I had Marfan syndrome, I had genetic testing. We had my wife, we decided to have my wife tested during her pregnancy, and it's called a CVS test. They take a sample of the placental blood, and they can tell you where you're at, whether or not your child to be will have Marfan. And it's at an early enough stage that if we did not decide to go through with the pregnancy, we could have opted not to. And we didn't really think of that as an option. We weren't thinking of it in that context. We thought of it in the context of we wanted to know one way or the other to prepare ourselves mentally. I mean, I served on the board with Ben for a little bit of overlap. I've done workshops at the conferences. I've spoken on the Living Successfully panel. And when faced with the question of, are you going to have the kid or not? It's like, if I'm, after all I've done and said and been through, if I'm not ready to have a kid with Marfan, I don't know who the hell is. We were good to go. We just wanted to know. We wanted to know to prepare ourselves mentally and to proceed forward. And then, what was the question you were asking me in the first place?
Well, you know what? I'm going to come back to it actually, because I want
Okay.
to stay on the testing, and then I am curious just about that decision about getting your kid more involved.
Okay.
But
Oh, yeah.
But I think the genetic testing question is one that I know comes up a lot. And so maybe Adam, I'd love to go to you and sort of get your take on what that experience is and any advice you have for folks.
So for me, it was kind of unique because I was never genetically tested until after I got married, but it had come up when I was a teenager, and it was just, okay, so I have this chest deformity. I happen to be one of the taller people in my grade. You can see my heartbeat, X, Y, and Z. And honestly, I didn't really think much of it. And I just know that I had to go to a cardiologist every 6 months to a year, and didn't really think much of it, but knew that there was something going on. Went through college, started medical school, got married, obviously knew more about it. And then, we started having the conversation, and I said, you know what, I want to know for sure. And then went to, the institution that I went to, got tested, and that's pretty much how it came back. But, for me, again, it's a unique situation because I kind of had the seed already planted, and making it official just was a thing on a piece of paper that said, hey, fibrillin genetic test positive. And so from there, that's when the other conversations started to happen, which I'm sure you're going to get into.
Oh, why don't you sort of continue that thread, if you will, and sort of what that other conversation, that next piece was.
Sure. So my disclaimer is it's a very, very, very individualized, personal, and unique discussion. So my views are my own, for what it's worth. But echoing what was said previously is there are many options that are out there. You want to find the option that fits for you. That option could be adoption. That option could be pursuing the pregnancy and knowing. That option could be pursuing the pregnancy and not knowing. That option could be planning. And then as far as the planning is concerned, you can choose pre-genetic testing, in vitro fertilization. The list goes on and on. For me and my wife, we chose in vitro fertilization and genetic testing.
Great, thank you. I know it's a difficult question. I know a lot of families grapple with. I think the ability to have this conversation openly and talk about why each one of us has made different decisions, I think is really a valuable one. So thank you for that.
I'm sorry, Ben, I just want to add one other thing.
Please do.
Not getting into finances, but there's also a financial component that's associated with these decisions. Insurance companies may or may not pay for some of those options. And so unfortunately, it plays a role, whether that is your only decision maker. Again, that's a totally separate thing, but it's not always covered by insurance.
And maybe Mitchell, I don't know if there's things you want to add in here, because it's a very expensive process, and there's a lot that goes into it, and but Mitchell, any sort of guidance or good questions to ask, or things that folks should consider as they're having that conversation from your perspective?
Yeah, 100%. So the first few things is it right for you guys? I mean, do you want to go through this? It can be quite a process to go through in vitro fertilization for the person and their partner. But really just trying to educate yourself about really what all the options are, number one. And then once you've done that and you've made your decision, go with it. You can always hem and haw, and you can always go back and say, oh, what if we should have done? What if we should have done? It won't change anything. So once you've made your decision, know that that was the right decision for you and your partner in that time, and that was what you went with and what you stuck with. When it comes to the costs of in vitro fertilization or the costs of adoption, it can be pretty costly. We're here to advocate for you guys, and we've actually started to have some success. Right now we have 2 patients going through PGD, and one of them, their company ended up paying 60% of all their expenses after we wrote an appeal letter. And then they personally called their person in HR to also advocate for them. So we are starting to break down some of these barriers. However, though, it's not always successful. And so what we do recommend is the cost can really vary from provider to provider, especially because the biggest cost is the in vitro fertilization. The actual genetic test isn't that costly. It's around $2,000 to $3,000. But the in vitro fertilization can range from $15,000 to $30,000 depending on who you're seeing. And so really trying to find somebody local, because you're going to be going back and forth a lot, is really the biggest thing that we try to help our patients with, that they can find comfort with. But really try and see what the different IVF centers are offering as far as cost and packages and that kind of thing. The one little piece of kind of silver lining I have for patients with all the related conditions is usually there's not a fertility issue. So if you are going down the route of IVF, we have a higher success rate in our patients than a typical, infertility patient will, because typically fertility is not the issue. It's just getting the embryos and testing the embryos that is the issue. One word of caution: if any doctor tries to say that a woman with Marfan syndrome should put in more than one embryo at a time, we really do caution against that in these conditions, just because multiples can increase the risks of something bad happening if the mother is the one that's affected. So we try to steer clear of that if possible.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve, just going back to you real quick, and then we'll do a little wrap and I want to invite everyone to share any last words. But Steve, do want to sort of ask about that decision to bring your kid to conference, and which was a joy for so many of us, but curious how you made that decision.
Well, by the time we brought Alex, it must have been like 24th or 20. I couldn't tell you how many conferences I've been to. Again, having served on the board, run workshops, multiple workshops, done work with the teen group. For us, and my wife has been amazingly supportive long before we had Alex, and in coming to conference with me and participating in groups for spouses, and whether or not she did that, even work with the kids, just being part of that community has been so important for me in my connection to Marfan and how I deal with it, my physical health, my emotional health. It's done wonders for me. And I was starting to go to conference back in the mid 90s when conferences were a lot smaller and were nowhere near as robust as they've become. And since then, to see the teen program develop, to seeing the different kids programs develop, I just felt we felt it was so important to bring Alex to be a part of that and to meet other kids that looked like him, walked like him. I had, whether it was with Marfan or VEDS or Ehlers-Danlos, anything and related to meet other people like that. I mean, the first time I went to conference I had looked around the conference and I saw my aunts and uncles and nieces and it's like a family reunion, but I didn't know who the hell anyone was. And similarly, my son has experienced a little of that. My dad ultimately was diagnosed with it later after I was diagnosed, and it just to have him be part of that community in some sense, to work with others, to interact with others with similar concerns, and we can't wait to return.
Have you ever been so popular as when you walked around the corner with Alex in the stroller and people just flocked to you? Jeremiah, I know,
Yeah.
I guess sort of the same question for you with regard to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So unfortunately, the last two conferences were virtual, which really sucks, but we got to go to the first conference, I guess 2 years ago now, where VEDS was included. And I mean, honestly, like even before this, but just in general, like the first time I met somebody with this condition around my own age and stuff, I mean, it's just a sigh of relief. I mean, I completely echo what Steve said. Like when you meet somebody with the same condition as yourself, it's just like there's other people out there living with this condition, and meeting other parents that have kids with VEDS is just it's very important. The conferences, the first conference we got to go to was just phenomenal. We were just blown away with how welcome we felt. As far as the VEDS people, the Marfans people just welcomed us, and we just felt very included. And, I met some amazing people with other conditions. We got to learn too about Marfans and Loeys-Dietz and stuff. And so there was some cross, pollination of just, of knowledge going across the board. And at the same time, it felt like a very, very safe space, and for once you could breathe, and then seeing your kids meet the other kids with the condition. And oh my goodness, I can't stress just how important that was. And I will say that the VEDS movement is starting to do like virtual kids sessions and stuff like that, where the kids can gather, and that's just incredibly important. And even so, more so important with our current situation with COVID and stuff. Being able for the kids to communicate with other kids like them is priceless.
Thank you. So I am going to go and ask each of you if there's just briefly, if there's any final messages or things you would like to share. This time has flown by, and again, I can't thank each of you enough for sharing these really important perspectives. You're all such inspirations, I know, to me, and I know to all the folks who are here with us tonight. I do just want to point out and make sure amplify Eileen's post in the chat, that if you do have specific medical questions, there are 3 links that she put in: marfan.org/ask, Loeys-Dietz.org/ask, and the VEDSmovement.org/ask. And so please to utilize those and to ask those questions so you can get great answers there. So with that, I am going to ask Adam to start us off with any final words or messages you might want to share.
So I think my take-home point for everyone on this is to have a positive attitude. It's okay to feel down. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel shocked when you get that first diagnosis, and whatever it may be, whether it's VEDS, Loeys-Dietz, or Marfan syndrome. But we have forums like this now. We have conferences like this. We have gatherings that enable you to ask any question. And there's no such thing as a silly question. And that sounds cliche, but it's true. It's a gathering of everyone who has the same thing or same type of thing. And everybody that is there to support that entity. And so when you walk into the conference room, and every medical professional that's there is there to treat Marfans, Loeys-Dietz, or VEDS, or everybody else that's there has an appearance that's similar to you or to your son or to your daughter. There's a support network that's being built, and you may not even realize it. And it's a matter of time before you embrace that, and that helps you get to the next level. So it's a tough situation, but there are means of helping you thrive, helping your child thrive and get through this. So good luck.
Great. Thank you. Truer words have never been spoken. And so thank you, Adam, for that. All right, Derek.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would echo is, and a couple of people have said it, I think Adam and Jeremiah have said it tonight, but it is a very positive time, the technology, just the imaging that can be done to, find like the smallest of small aneurysms. And just, I mean, it's amazing what can be seen now with technology. And so I think, you know, if you are affected, I mean, you should be positive about that, and just realize that, you know, there are people out there that can help you. There are experts. I mean, I've said this already tonight, but I mean, the Marfan organization is a great place to go to get information, and they will point you in the right direction. I mean, that's what they do. I mean, so, I mean, I think just being positive, dealing with things. I mean, I don't think there's not one answer for every family. I mean, we all know that our families are all different. I mean, you know, I mean, I have a basketball team, you know, and so like, it's like just the dynamics of everyone's home is completely different. And you just have to handle it the best you can. And I think that's all you can do with affected and non-affected kids. I mean, because the non-affected kids deal with that too, you know? So they, you know, you just have to, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I feel like a cheerleader, but I mean, you know, like you just have to go out there and do it. But I mean, I think that's one good thing about dads, because I think that's what we do, you know? Jeremiah said that too. He said, you know, you just go to work, you do your thing, you raise your family, you know, and hope for the best. So for all of them, for everyone. So, but thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation tonight.
Great. My sister does not have Marfan syndrome. She and I used to have fights as kids about who was more affected. She claimed it was her. So it is certainly a piece of that. So thank you, Derek. All right, Steve.
I'm going to end up echoing what people have already said already with two themes, which is you are not alone and you're not in the dark. You don't have to be in the dark. It is a huge community, huger than you think. There are so many people to reach out to. It has become so much more diverse now because of the partnerships with the VEDS community, the Loeys-Dietz community, Ehlers-Danlos in general. And it's just amazing what resources there are to connect with people who have it, who have kids with it, and the medical professionals, the access, it's phenomenal. And you do not have to go through this alone in any way, no matter what your role, whether you have it yourself or someone else that you love has it.
That's right. And this community and this gathering is a perfect example of that. So great. Thank you very much, Steve. All right, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I mean, echo pretty much everything that Derek said as well. Positivity, you know, making sure you're maintaining your well, you know, your mental health first. I will say, you know, for people that are recently diagnosed or going through, you know, being tested and whatnot, I mean, the first line of action is just finding support, right? I mean, because you don't know everything at that point in time. So, but there are people out there. There's communities that are online. If you need help getting connected, you can go through the VEDS movement. We've got an amazing group of just people that are living with this condition and have had experiences and can help you, right? It's about building on the other experiences. You know, you don't have to start from square one. You know, we build on other people's experiences and continue to move forward. You know, yeah, just, you know, you're not alone. You don't live in the dark, you know, please don't, you know, I mean, I know that it's hard at first, but you know, you will get through it, and through finding the proper care team is very important. Educating yourself, reaching out, you know, if you need parent support group, we got parent support groups that we meet once a month, kids groups and things like that. You know, just please, you know, just reach out. You know, that's really what it comes down to. Don't be afraid to reach out.
Absolutely. No matter what you need, there's somebody who is.
Yeah. And I'm so happy to have been part of this, and I hope to meet some of you guys in the future, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very, very much. And,
yeah, no problem.
And I want to amplify that. Please, you know, this is a community that thrives and is there for we're there for each other. And so if there are questions, concerns, you're about to go through an experience or you're thinking about trying to make a decision, I can say from personal experience, there's never been a question or a concern that I've had that I haven't been able to find someone who I can talk to. And a number of folks who are on this call, in fact, have been those people for me, and for which I'm enormously grateful for. Mitchell, I'll go over to you now.
Yeah, I mean, we have this great cohesive community, but what we find is people that are successful and kids is they have a cohesive family and they know that they have the support of their parents. They know how they have the support of their siblings. You know, when it is day to day going to school or playing on the playground or wherever it is, just know that they've got your support. These guys have so much more emotional maturity than their peers do because they've been dealing with all this at home. And so we really see that in their resiliency is just the strength that they don't even realize. Sometimes we have to point it out, but they are light years ahead of so many of their peers in those regards. And they're going to be great adults one day and able to care for a family of their own if they want to one day. And so, you know, the more positive community, family, kind of sibling dynamic that we can bring into their lives, the better they're going to do day in and day out, knowing that they have that behind them.
That is what a beautiful message to conclude on. So thank you. Then thank you all. I'm going to turn it back to Eileen. And again, I just want to say thank you. It's been a real honor and inspiration to be with all of you tonight. So thank you for taking the time. Eileen, it's all you. It's all yours.
Thank you. But thank you all so much, Ben, for moderating. And I really, really want to say how much, first, I enjoyed watching and not participating this time, but also you guys, you know, just really incredible that you're able to come on with us tonight, share your thoughts. Share, a lot of times, you know, even at our events, we see a lot of the moms taking the lead, but, you know, the dads are really important too. And just you being able to, you know, tell people what you're going through, probably validating for them how they're feeling also. I mean, that's just such an important role. And all of you, I can say, I know your families and everybody, you know, it really is a family effort. Even Alex is busy, you know, graduating from schools, going to law school early. You know, we got to spend time with him on Capitol Hill. He joined us last year as a volunteer advocate. So, you know, the involvement is great, you know, and love seeing, you know, Jeremiah's kids little getting involved, and Alex, no doubt, is going to be a future leader for the foundation. So thank you all so much for that. Michael, do you want to say a couple of words about this while you're here before I do my closing slides?
I'm not sure what to say. I think maybe I should mention Derek has 5 daughters. I think that's like we got that out there tonight. That may help him with Beth later on. You know, so I thought it was great. This was I got to say, Eileen and I are on most of these, and I think I had more smiles tonight and more enjoyment than I recall in some time because it was so personal, so poignant, and important to the community. And, you know, as Derek mentioned, we're really honored to have not only Marfan, but we have Loeys-Dietz and we have the VEDS movement. That's where I met Jeremiah and Rachel. And I think we'll probably be additional groups come our way as well.
Oh, we were losing you, Michael.
Oh, we are? Okay.
Yes.
It's been a wonderful night.
Okay. Let me go down to my my end screens here now, and I'm telling you what else we have coming up. So again, as Ben said, there were some medical questions asked tonight in the Q&A box, and if you have any other questions related to medical aspects, Jan Lynch, the nurse in our help center, answers all those questions about all these conditions and goes to our experts if she can't. And those are the websites that Ben mentioned earlier, and I did put those in the chat box. I'll be sending a follow-up email out to everybody tomorrow, or the next day, and so those links will be in there too if you have additional questions. Just to let you know what's upcoming, because we're so glad you're here tonight, but we have a lot more coming up this spring. We have a new kids club that started last month, as Jeremiah said, instigated by a bunch of VEDS kids who said, hey, we want to get together. It's for 9 to 12-year-olds, and that's once a month on Thursdays. We have Teens Together, which is a team chat and team game night. They don't always talk about their condition. They're just teens, but they're getting together with kids who know what it's like, and that's really valuable too. We have some medical webinars coming up. We have aortic imaging, your questions answered. I love this one. We're going to have a chief of cardiology imaging talking about, showing us different echoes and MRIs and showing us what doctors are looking at, what they're looking for, and really translating that for us. So that's going to be great. We have a COVID update, another one coming up April 26th, featuring a senior White House advisor, Dr. Marcella Nunez-Smith, and she actually is a Marfan mom. So we're lucky to have her, as well as our other experts, Dr. Ken Eagle and Dr. Enid Neptune, leading that on April 26th. And then through Gentech, we have advances in the treatment of aortic dissection in May. And as Michael mentioned, our virtual annual conference is July 8th to 11th. And we'll have another dad's group there. So this is not a one-off. And Mitchell, I think you'll be hearing more about that from Jan soon. So, and then in terms of support, I mean, I think this has been a common theme tonight. Everybody's been talking about you not being alone. We have virtual support groups through Marfan, through VEDS, through Loeys-Dietz. We have our 2021 Walk for Victory season, which is mostly virtual at this point, but it's a way for us all to connect online, and that's been a lot of fun. And obviously, we're all on social media. Through Walk, if you want to look forward to the 2022 annual conference in Newport, participate in the Walk for Victory, and you can possibly win an incredible trip to Newport Beach. So we'll send that link along tomorrow. So everybody get your walk team going. That's the hotel, literally. I've already got my week planned there, extra week planned there. It's beautiful. And you know, as everybody said, we're here for you, and we want to know what else we can do for you. What are the questions you have? And if you have any other ideas for webinars, we're here for you. So thank you all tonight. Thank you to our panelists. It was great watching, listening to all you had to add tonight. Ben, thank you for moderating. And we hope to see everybody soon at our next event. Take care. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.